All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is podcast number 2 here at UFC GYM. We talked to Mike Bisping last month a lot about boxing conditioning and what made him a great athlete. We're very honored this month to welcome Mr. Cub Swanson. Cub, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Okay.
Can't complain.
First, the elephant in the room. Where did the name Cub come from?
Yeah, it's a pretty simple story. Both my brothers are pretty light skinned because I'm half Swedish, half Mexican. And both my brothers have colored eyes and light skin. And I came out with brown eyes. I was darker complexion than them. And I was really chubby. And my middle brother, couldn't say my real name is Kevin, which I don't think I look like a Kevin. But
No.
He called me Cub. And because I was a chubby little brown baby, they called me Cub, and that's been my name my whole life.
And you've done a good job using that name. And it seems like nobody knows the word Kevin.
Yeah.
Everybody knows you by Cub, right?
Yeah. I mean, I got to a point when I wanted to turn pro. I was like, which name am I going to go with? And, Cub seemed like the right fit because it's been my name my whole life. Like, If you asked a lot of my distant cousins what my real name is, they don't know. Because Cub has just been my name.
And I got to point out that you're actually wearing for this podcast a Cub shirt.
Yeah. So
you can see Cub Swanson. There it is. Killer Cub. That's the fighter nickname is Killer.
Yeah. Killer is and I came up with that nickname just because it was kind of a play on my personality. People who know me, I'm pretty quiet and pretty mellow person, and when I fight, I'm like the opposite. So it's like my Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, So Killer Cub is the name that best suits me.
When I was reading up on you, your childhood is very intriguing, and it's really, it's really one of the best stories that I've read. Is when you look at it, correct me if I'm wrong, but your dad actually died of cancer.
Yeah.
When you were like 3 months old, right?
Yeah, 3 months.
And then as you look at your childhood, it seems like you bounced around a little bit, and then you actually turned towards gangs. Is that right?
Yeah, and you could sum it up that way. It was a progression of things, but yeah, basically my father passed away when I was 3 months old, and he had already been sick when I was conceived, and so he passed away from skin cancer. And so my mom took it really hard. She ended up getting into drugs, which was a big thing in that side of my family. Mm-hmm. All my uncles, everybody has always kind of had their ups and downs with drugs. And so my mom kind of slipped into that. Me and my brothers were going to be put into a foster home possibly, and they were talking about splitting us up. So one of my...
How many brothers do you have?
I have 2 brothers, so there's 3 of us.
Okay.
So my dad's cousin and his wife, they were like 25 years old, just got married, and they decided to take us in for a little bit, and that turned into 10 years. So they raised us, till I was about from 3 years old to 13.
How are those memories during those years?
Great. It's like a completely different life. I was raised in the church. I was homeschooled most of my life, and then they got a divorce, and they had their rough patch, and so I ended up moving back in with my mom at 13, and my oldest brother had already moved back a little while before that, and he had been on a tear. He was the oldest one when my father passed away, so he always has been just kind of had that fire in him and anger, and so he had already been messing up. So when I moved back with my mom, by then my mom had 3 more little girls, so I had 3 little sisters. So I moved back in with my mom, and it was like 7 of us, and sometimes my aunt and her kids would stay, and it was always like I went from like middle class to like a little bit poor in a ghetto neighborhood with 10 plus people living in a
you're
house.
13 years old, right, at this point, and so you're still very impressionable, I would assume.
Yeah.
So I just can't imagine what that would be like. So here you're in this very kind of set way of going to church and being a model citizen, and then that goes away, and then you go back into this kind of fluid lifestyle. At 13 years of age, did at that point, how did you feel? I mean, were you did you have any father figures, mentors? Or?
No. My older brother was the closest one I had, and he was very popular. Everybody knew who he was, so that was intriguing because I came from a very, sheltered, situation where all my friends were homeschooled and went to church, and so I had a very small community. So by the time I moved in with my mom, went to high school, I tried to kind of do my own thing, and I felt different, because I didn't know pop culture. I didn't know a lot of things. I felt vulnerable, and almost like a nerd, and if people tried to pick on me for being different, my natural instinct was to, stop that. And it made me lean towards hanging out with my brother and his friends, where I had a...
When you say stop it, you mean, were you getting into fights? Or
no fights, but just
avoiding the situation? Just
being kind of classified as a nerd, and kind of different and weird, because I didn't grow up in public school and be around all that. I was completely over here, doing something completely different. And so I didn't watch TV. I didn't have clothes like everybody else. I was just way different. So, for me, feeling like an outsider, I leaned more towards hanging out with my brother and his friends, where I felt protected, where nobody would say anything about me or else they'd get beat up, So that became like a safe haven of being in that crowd. And then you end up hanging out with these guys that are your friends, and then they start beefing with these guys, and now you feel obligated to retaliate, and you just kind of fall into a gang situation, and it just can happen like that.
So did you actually find yourself at 14 or 15 inside of a gang? And
I wasn't. The thing is we were never really considered ourselves a gang, but the local police, considered us. The way where I grew up, there were like real gangs where people carried guns, and then there was like crews or cliques, or groups of guys. They partied, they got into fights. They just didn't take it to that next level, but we all hung out with the same people, and those guys were like on another level. And I've, grew up with all those guys, we were all at the same parties. You see all stuff. I saw a lot of people get shot, I've seen it all. I've been in the situation where I've heard bullets pass by, just real.
At like 15, at 14?
Yeah, like 15 years old.
How do you even process that?
You just deal with it as it comes, and that's pretty much been the way my life has gone from the beginning. It is like when I moved in with my step family, I just kind of was like, okay, this is the situation. I'll make the best of it. So that's been my attitude my whole life. I think my brothers both had a different, take on it. And so I think they were affected differently. So I find that intriguing. But for myself, it's just been kind of like, oh, that is what it is. So when I got wrapped up into all that craziness, it was like, well, this is just life. And I thought that was the norm. I began to think that was real life. And that's what real life is all about. And so that was a unique experience for those years of my life until I ended up in juvenile hall.
And how'd you end up there?
I just kept getting, so the police department where I lived and went to high school, Cathedral City, they were themselves like a gang. So they were rough, and they beat us up a bunch of times. I got beat up a few times by the police, and they would look for us, and literally if they saw me on sight, they would come after me, throw me to the ground, search me. And just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or getting into...
Were you provoking them, or they just would find you and say, okay, were you disrespectful to them? Or?
No, we would be like at house parties, and the cops would get called, and they would recognize, 20, 30 people, line us up, and just talk down to us. And then if anybody said anything, smart, they'd snatch them up, take them, behind the car.
Wow.
So it was a rough situation. So then it became like us versus them, and... It was just not a good situation. So they had it out for me and just getting into trouble and being in the places that I shouldn't have been. Ultimately, I ended up getting picked up a bunch of times and released, and then finally they had enough to keep me for a while. And the thing that I had got in trouble for was me and two friends were drinking at the park, and one of my friends broke into an RV, and there was nothing in there. It was parked in someone's front yard, and because it had a bed in it, they classified it as a home invasion. Well, not a home invasion, breaking and entering. Home invasions if somebody's home. And so it was kind of a serious charge. And then the kid that me and him got picked up, and my other friend got away, and he blamed the whole thing on me. So I ended up doing a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, at what point, as you're going through all of that, do you look at your life and say, I got to do something different? I got to go on a different path?
At that point, when I was in juvenile hall, I was sitting in a little cell, like a holding cell, and they just bring you 3 meals a day until you're in there long enough, and then they put you in group rooms, and so then you have people around you.
How old are you at this point when you're in juvenile?
16.
16.
16 going on 17, but it was in between my junior and senior year. I started school a year early, so I started high school at 13. So I mean, I was already kind of impressionable, and then being younger than everybody didn't help. So yeah, I was 16, and I was in there, and being in a room by myself and just having lots of time to think. It just, me being a thinker, I just kind of replayed everything and go, how did I end up in this situation? And I just kind of took responsibility for everything that I did to get there, and didn't say, this guy blamed it on me, because I knew that I deserved to be there because of all the stuff I had been doing, the trouble I had been putting my mom through. So yeah, I kind of took responsibility for it and did my time, and I did a complete 180. I was smuggling pencil. I was breaking off pencil tips, which you weren't. If you got caught with a pencil or the tip of a pencil, you would get charged like you were having a knife. So I used to break it off in class and hide it in my the Velcro of my shoe and go back to my room. And you make a pencil out of toilet paper and the string of your underwear, and you can make it all tight and with the with a little piece of lead.
Look at you, little MacGyver.
And I did a year's worth of schoolwork in the 3 months I was there, and so they sent me to a placement home. So I did 3 months in juvenile hall and then 9 months in a group home. And in the group home, I went to a regular high school because I had caught up, and so I got to go to high school and played sports there and until I graduated and they released me.
What blows me away is when you think about your childhood and the turmoil that you went through and some of the route that you took. And knowing you today, you would never guess that that's the path you were on as a child.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me at some point, whether it was through emotional intelligence and you just woke up yourself that, hey, I got to change my path, or was there somebody that came into your life that said, no, it's, take a left turn instead of a right turn?
I think there was a lot of people in my life over the years that wanted to help, but you're not going to be helped until you want to, and I'm stubborn like that. So it really took myself, and from the journey from getting out of juvenile hall, even in juvenile hall to where I'm at now, there's been a lot of people in my life that have helped, but it was only when I started listening and started wanting to be better, and literally the sport really pulled me out of all that.
When you think about the kids that were in juvenile hall with you, or even kids today, what would your advice be to them to get them out of their current situation?
Just to, I just went back recently. I went on Christmas and brought gifts to all the kids and talked to them on Christmas Day, because I figured, what better day than some day like Christmas? Because I remember spending holidays and being in juvenile hall or the placement and going, man, this sucks. That's when it hits you hard. So I wanted to go that day in particular to go tell these kids that you need a dream, first of all, and most of them don't. They don't think that it's obtainable. So the one thing that I was taught growing up is that have a dream and you could be anything you want to be. And as cheesy as it sounds, like knowing that, knows that like anything short of that, you're failing, you know? Mm-hmm. So you really do want to reach for the stars, have a dream. So that's number one, is just have some kind of a dream. And then two, it's really about realizing there's more options than you think. Like I was telling the kids, did you know you could become a Snapchat specialist? Like I've met the one the UFC hired, and they hired this guy to come on and make their Snapchat better. Like everyone's on their phone all the time. Like I don't think people realize that certain jobs exist and that not a lot of people are trying to get those jobs, but they're out there, you know. And if this is the path you want to choose, there's tons of options, you know. If you want to go into, you know, social media, or if you want to go into video game design, it's like even if you want to become a fighter but you're not that great, you could still become a manager or a coach.
I mean, look at me. I wanted to become a fighter and go out there and compete. It didn't take me long to realize I was not a fighter. I was a lover.
Just one punch in the face, right, and you're like, you know what, this isn't for me.
It took one punch. So when you... The funny thing is, like, I went into Palm Springs with you, I don't know, about 18 months ago, and drove the market, and it almost felt like you were the mayor. You know, you were talking to policemen, firemen, news people. People are coming off the street. So, is your reputation now one very much of the community?
I think so. I think I represent myself well and the community well, you know. But at the same time, like I tell the kids too, like I get a lot of respect from. I know who are, you know, bad people in a sense, you know, like the heads of gangs, you know, that all over, you know, biker gangs, Mexican gang, black gangs. They're like, I know who they are, you know, and those guys give me respect, and they just say, hey, you know, I'm a fan, and they keep their distance, and I appreciate that, you know. But so I tell kids, if it's a respect thing, you're just looking for respect, I'm like, do something great, people will respect you. Not about, you know, beating somebody up on the street and getting respect that way. That's not the only way to get it. So I just, you know, I was able to accomplish that on a whole nother, you know, journey.
And it seems like there was a couple influential people in your life as you were transitioning to fighting. I think Joe Stevenson being one, and Tim Bradley being another. Talk about that a little bit. Yeah,
well, Joe Stevenson was kind of crazy. It just makes me laugh thinking back of like how I went about things, and just like when people say I can't do something, it's ridiculous, because I was from a place that nobody was fighting professionally. The only people that were bums being set up. All their records were like 0-6, you know, and people made fun of them because they thought they were tough, but everyone knew they were bums. So when I wanted to get into it, I started asking people. And that's how I got in touch with Kami, my manager, who's been my manager my whole career. And I decided one day that I wanted to quit my job and move to Orange County, because I thought that I needed better training, and that was a huge step and something that I did all on my own. Even everybody told me that it was a bad idea. I just did it. And the way I got in touch with Joe Stevenson is I had went to a King of the Cage, which was a local show, and I thought, well, who are these guys that are the best? Because they had rankings. So I looked at my weight class, and I looked at the top guys in my weight class, and I looked them up, anything I could find, where their gym is, where they live, and just started doing research, anything I could find on them.
All local in your market or outside of your market?
All Southern California.
Okay.
So I found Joe Stevenson was one of the ones, and he had a website built, and it had an email. So I just said, hey, and I don't know why, but it had like a contact phone number, and it had the same area code.
Was Joe in the UFC at this point?
No, way before. And hey, we had the same area code. And even though the cities are kind of far apart, they had the same area code. So I
he's
sent him,
like in Victorville.
He's in Victorville, so which actually an hour and a half away. Yeah. So I sent him a message, and I was like, hey, man, I'm a hungry fighter. I'm willing to learn, and blah, blah, blah. And then he wrote me back randomly like a month and a half later and was like, well, if you drive out here, I'll teach you. And at that point, he had actually retired, and he was living on some guy's couch, and fighting kind of took a turn for the worse for him before The Ultimate Fighter. And so he was like, yeah, if you want to come. And so I went to his house and picked him up, and we went to a local gym, and he started working with me. And we did that for a little while, and he wouldn't take any money from me. He was like,
he's doing it for free.
He's like, yeah, if you're going to drive all the way here, I'm not going to charge you. And I really didn't have any money to give him. Just driving there was, breaking my budget.
How are you supporting yourself at this point?
I was working for United Cerebral Palsy, so I was working with kids with disabilities. I was getting paid okay, but it was like 5 hours a day. So I was able to work and then go train. And I did that, and for a little while.
So you're driving, you're working in Palm Springs, you're driving 90 minutes to Victorville, and then driving home the same day.
Yeah, but I was probably doing that maybe once a week because I was training in Palm Springs. And I lived, 25 minutes from my work, so I would drive to work and then go train, which was by my work, and then drive home. And I couldn't go home in between because I couldn't afford it with gas. And I was eating like Del Taco and just, dollar menu style. That's the real reason I quit drinking soda, because I couldn't afford it. I would just I would order food and get a water cup. And and then with my relationship with Joe, he ended up getting a shot on the Ultimate Fighter, and he became big in UFC. So because we had worked together, one day I kept fighting. One day he called me out of the blue and was like, hey, you want to help me start training for camp? And I was like, sure. And he invited me to Big Bear. And
so you think he respected you as a fighter at that point?
Yeah. Because we stayed in touch, but we didn't work together for a period of time, and because he moved to Vegas. And then he started using me for camps, and I became him and on a bunch of other UFC fighters like Punching Bag. And I would mimic people's styles and do whatever they needed, and then it just made me really good. So
wow.
It kind of helped me, get to where I'm at now.
Did you work with any other UFC athletes besides
Yeah,
Joe?
I was working with Gray Maynard, Tyson Griffin, Jay Hiron, trying to think of his name, Josh Berkman, whoever Joe was friends with, and they brought around, I would give him looks.
I'm wondering, by you being put in that position, I mean, they say that your style is wild, unpredictable, and explosive. But maybe the way you were kind of brought up in this sport, you think it made you that way?
I mean, I think people's fighting style kind of tells you a little bit about them. And so for me, I think if you know me and you see the way I move, then it makes sense. It's just, I have good cardio. I have a lot of technique, but I like to do things my way. So I throw a lot of kind of awkward techniques that seem like they're not they're not meant to be so specific, but they are. So the way that I fight, a lot of coaches would have said, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. But I did it their way for so long, and I learned how to cheat and cut corners and do things a little unorthodox. So I'm not fighting like everybody else, because everybody trains to fight like everybody else and defend like everybody.
You know what it feels like when I watch your fights, because I'm a fan of yours when you fight, and it's like that kid that you don't want to have shoot the 3-point basket, yet he shoots it, and it's like, no. Then all of a sudden it goes in, and it's like, yeah, it went in.
Yeah.
Your fighting style is like, no, what is he doing? And all of a sudden you knock people out and you submit people. How much of your success is based on your style?
I think a lot. I think, I forced things a lot to do what my coaches at the time wanted me to do. And it wasn't until I got to Greg Jackson. First of all, Eric Paulson kind of made me real funky because he's a catch wrestler, but I still, with my stand-up, I was very traditional, and I felt that was lacking. It kept you in a box. And so when I first started training with Greg, he saw like my potential, and he was telling me like, I just want to open you up. You got to be free. I gotta give you parameters. Like, instead of being in a box, I'm gonna put you in a big yard, and don't go that this far, but just be creative inside this area. So, basically being like, don't throw a spinning attack backing up. because if the guy's coming at you and you throw a spinning attack and you miss, you're for sure going to your back, and so it puts you in a bad position. But if you're moving forward or standing still, rip it, So there's like little rules that I have that I don't break, or I try not to break.
It's like discipline chaos.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good. And so, by the way, Tim Bradley, so how did you intersect with him?
So Tim Bradley's kind of a unique story. We went to high school together, and he was one of the security guard's sons. And so he was very structured. He had gotten into trouble in like elementary school, so he was already way past that.
He started early.
Yeah, so by high school, he was very disciplined. He was trying to make the Olympic team. He ran. I had a hard time making it to first period, and he was at the track running sprints in the morning before school by himself. And so, like, he was a very disciplined kid. Then when I started doing my thing and I ended up moving back home after I had moved to Orange County and trained for a long time and moved back home, I was able to go to the boxing gym and ran into him where he was training. And that was right before he started making it real big. And then when he got the Pacquiao fight, I was there to witness that and just kind of see how he went into it fearlessly. And being from the same hometown, same high school, we're the same age, same year we graduated. And just seeing him go ahead of me and do something big was kind of a relief, because everything I had done up until then, I was the first to do it. Nobody had done anything close to what I've done in MMA in our sport. So it's just, there's nobody for me to kind of like watch and go, I'll just do what he did. I had to really search for that. And so to kind of get to a point in my career where I just needed to take it to another level. I was right next to him, training and sparring with him and seeing him do great things on a global level like that made it seem more obtainable for me to take it to another level.
He created a blueprint for you.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
follow. And then by training with a world-class boxer, it's got to help your skills, right?
Yeah. And that's one thing that's really helped with my style is all the great training I've had.
Yeah. So shifting gears, how has it changed you or impacted you since having Kenda and Royal in your life?
Well, that's been awesome. I think I'm most proud about like waiting until I was 33, which is crazy because I've only said this a few times and more recently, but that's how old my father was when he passed away, was 33.
Wow.
So that was the same age that I had my daughter. So it was kind of like...
Is that always a barrier for you, do you think, that you didn't want to have a baby and not be there for him? Or?
No, I really didn't even think about it until it all happened.
Yeah.
Until I realized, wow, I'm the same age. But I just didn't... I always knew that my journey was going to cause so much selfishness that I couldn't... If I wanted to be great, I couldn't afford to have, a significant other or a child, or else I would neglect them. So I wanted to give myself all the attention and chase those dreams and do the things I want to do. So that way when I, could say, you know what, I did a lot of things. I'm happy with that. Let me start a new chapter in my life. So I'm most proud that I waited and I found somebody in Kenda that kind of was on the exact same boat. So, we had a Royal together, and now it's like, I don't feel like I'm missing out going to the club or anything. Like, I just want to hang out with her and hang out at the house. And like, I'm perfectly fine with that, where I think in my 20s, I don't know if that would have been the case.
And I'm wondering, everything you've been through in your life, I would imagine that's making you just an incredible dad today. I
would like to think so. Yeah. I always told, the funny thing is that I always told people what was my goal in MMA, because I had a grandpa, my step-grandpa, he was always telling me about, he was in the Army or in the Navy, and he was a boxer, and he would joke around that he wasn't very good. And I just liked his stories, and I just thought, like, when I really wanted to become a professional mixed martial artist, I just kept thinking, man, that'd be some cool stories to be able to have grandkids on my knee and just tell them cool stories.
Yeah.
That's all I ever thought. Like, that was the extent of it, not like that I would be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So it's beyond that. It's pretty cool.
That's good. So let's shift gears again. So you're at the 145 division, 5'7", so you're lean and mean. 25 wins, 8 by knockout, 7 by sub. What's your favorite win of all time?
And these are always the hard questions because people don't realize
That's why I get paid the big bucks to ask the hard question.
The hard question. Yeah. The thing is, every fight is different. Every fight is unique. I've had a fight where I went into a fight with a broken hand. I've told this story to you before. Went into a fight with a broken hand, broke my other hand in the second round, and still won the fight. Like that. That's a huge win. Another big win is George Root, my first win in the UFC. I coming off a loss. There's a lot of doubt. Had to ask myself if I was going to be a gym hero or somebody who could make it happen at the right time. And I got a huge knockout in Sports Center's top 10. The Dennis Seaver fight was such a big card in July. Ended up knocking him out. There's been so many fights that just were great for different reasons and are always personal. But I guess the Doo Ho Choi fight might take the cake just because I got the fight of the year. It was a crazy battle.
My favorite fight.
18,000 people in attendance were just deafening. And then after all that, all the media stuff, I went back to my room, hung out with my family for a while, and my girl was like, come on, let's go to bed. Finally get home, her back to our room, and she told me she was pregnant. So, that was just quite a day.
Oh, the big 24 hours.
Yeah. So, that one probably I got to take it.
And if you could have one fight back to do over again, which fight is that?
All the losses.
One that sticks out though, that you were just like, if I would have just.
Probably the last one. The last one stung the most because I think that was the first time I felt like I lost to somebody that just was not on my level.
What'd you do wrong?
I had been working to be offensive in the clinch, and so I was very confident with that. And my coaches were like, "Be confident. I want you to be aggressive in there." And if I would have been playing it safe, I would have just bailed out of there. But because I wanted to beat up my opponent in every position, I decided to stay there and try to do damage, and that gave him the opportunity. So I was just a tactical error, and it happens.
It's interesting because when you think about your childhood and how you progressed both as a person and professionally, you did it through discipline and just a lot of self-talk. But yet, when you're in the octagon, you tend to take a lot of chances and risk that you don't need to, right? You talk about wanting to beat him up a little bit or exercise. You told me one time that you had a chance to knock him out, but you wanted to instead practice some other things inside the octagon. Do you think you're too much of a risk taker?
And probably, but I'm also a fan favorite because I take risks.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I always knew that I was a fighter and an entertainer. I'm not much of a talker that way, like the sport is going, but I always wanted to be a little flashy and have fun in there because that's the opposite of my personality. So that's a chance for me to really be, different and have fun. I've always told people I take a lot of risks because I get bored. I do months and months and months of training, and then I get in there and the guy just wants to stare at me and play who goes first, and I'm like, I'm bored. Let's get it. We only have 15 minutes.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So you are also known to be one of the most conditioned athletes in the UFC. If they had a 10-round fight, could you go all 10 rounds?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And what do you is it genetics, or do you just work harder than other people to get that condition?
I think it's part genetics, but part just being smart and knowing, like my whole career, every coach I've had, every rehab, I went to is physical rehab, physical trainer, just massage therapist. I just asked them, why are we doing this? And I gained knowledge that way. And I've really learned a lot about my body and how the body works. So because I understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing things, I'm able to be real optimal with the way I'm able to put out energy and conserve and be real strategic with it.
When we reminds me when we started UFC GYM, one of the things that we did is we did a lot of analysis of how a UFC athlete trains. And it's obviously you go through all the specific disciplines, right? Boxing and jiu-jitsu and wrestling and so forth. But what really stood out was the conditioning aspect and really how functional in the functional movements you guys trained in. And this was before all the boutiques around the world started growing and CrossFits and everything else. You guys were really doing kind of CrossFit movements before CrossFit was there. Mm-hmm. And we created this program called DUT, which you know about. You're actually you taught DUT classes at UFC GYM.
Yes.
But when you think about that style of training, when you're taking kettlebells and you know doing planks and all these different types of functional movements, how important is that in your training regimen?
Well, so with everything I've learned, we do, low base and then explosive workouts when we're doing conditioning. Our fight training is our fight training. We're either drilling or we're going live or we're going at a longer controlled pace. That's separate. But when it comes to just conditioning, we have to make weight. So we need to be real optimal with how we're burning those calories. And one of them being our low base days. So if we're going to do like explosive, like sprints, you can only do that 2, maybe 3 days a week. Every other day, you're going to do low base. So, with the DUT, that's one of the perfect things you can do is basically, okay, for 45 minutes or a half hour, we're going to do a consistent pace, but different exercises, different workouts. And it works for everybody because whether you just started camp or you're finishing camp, you're at different places with where your conditioning is. And that works with all kinds of people that are coming in. You got some people that are in less shape and better shape, but they can all do the workout together because it's all on how hard you push. So if you're feeling great, you can push the pace and just rip through the circuit a bunch of times, and it's just different movements over and over. And the person who's less in shape, they just slow down a little bit. But the fact that everyone can do that together, and you look to your left and your right, and you're just seeing that nobody's quitting, that's probably the coolest thing is just knowing that everyone's suffering at a different level, but everyone's working together and getting it done. And that's the best workout for a daily workout.
And I remember you telling me, because for those that don't know, you own a gym with Mike Bisbing in Costa Mesa. Mm. So you often go there and you teach and you coach, you work out, you train there. But one of the things that you told me after you taught a DUT class was you were impressed on how all the members inspired and motivated each other to finish the workout. Mm-hmm. And it's got to be very similar to kind of preparing for a fight camp, right?
Yeah. I mean, the one of the weirdest things is my family and friends come out to my fights, and they know that I may say hi or give them a hug, but we're not hanging out because of the nerves and everything, and I'm so mentally prepared on the fight. I only want to be around the people that I was in camp with.
Which, by the way, when I was at your fight, you just ignored me altogether. You didn't even give me a courtesy head nod.
Well, yeah, I didn't want to take any of your, hey, I think you should do this or that. I was already locked in on my game plan. Yeah,
that's all right. I get it.
But yeah, so I only want to be around my training partners, the people that were there every day with me. That's the only people I feel comfortable with before my fight. So it just shows you that when you're in the gym, going through the grind, that you bond with the people next to you. And so I think that the group setting and the group classes, everybody pushing each other, is just the coolest thing.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. And the month of February, we have Daily Ultimate Training Month, and we're going to be focused on this in every club around the world, all 150 locations, no matter what country you're in, domestic or international. We really want to make sure that we provide the same experience in every facility. And so part of that is taking everything that you as a UFC fighter does, where you create this community around you that makes you a better version of yourself, right? These guys all push you hard. Sometimes it's in a specific discipline, sometimes it's in fitness, but they push you extremely hard so you can find your limits. Mm-hmm. And I think it's what you said earlier, is that in each one of these clubs, you have our incredible coaches that are highly certified to take 20, 30 members in to a class, a 50-minute environment, and each one of them is able to find out what their personal limit is. And then the question is, can they improve on that every time they come in, right? And that's what we think is really a fitness accomplishment for that individual. And so as you take a look at the duck class, in example, Costa Mesa, what do you think stands out about the classes that you see on a daily basis?
Well, for one, we have a unique setup with our little duck training area. The outside area is pretty amazing, and it gets packed. And so what I like about it is just the different levels of people. But everyone knows, like, when you look to your left and your right, there's going to be somebody better than me, but there's also going to be somebody not as good as me. And everyone needs to know where to push, and to push themselves. But it's creating that environment that sets that up, allows people to kind of get comfortable and say, okay, I don't feel so good today. Let me just finish. Let me just finish the workout. And then there's days where you're like, I'm gonna try to make this my best workout ever. And I think that's pretty cool, just knowing that exists in there.
It's kind of interesting because it's almost, when you drill it down to its core, sometimes you have 20 people come together that don't know each other, and at the end of the workout they're hugging each other.
Yeah.
Because they just accomplished something together.
Yeah.
Right. Very similar to almost at the end of your fight, right?
Yeah.
You're hugging, and for that matter, you hug the opponent, which I guess is the coach at the gym, right?
Yeah. I even fights I've been like, this guy was talking crap. I'm not gonna shake his hand after the fight, and then after the fight, you're giving him a hug, because it's just there's something about.
Does that respect last forever though? Does that?
Not always, but at least for a little while, until some more things are said sometimes. But it's just the competitive nature. But the side of it of the respect is just when you give it your all. It's not like if you knock somebody out or submit them, it's not really the same. But if you go to decision, you're like, man, I really tried to take you out, and I couldn't do it. So I respect that, And I think it's the same thing in the gym setting. Is these people are, going through something with this personal doubt, like, man, I want to quit, but I'm not. Should I? Maybe. And then that kind of roller coaster of emotions, and then getting it done, and then looking left and right, going, man, we all did this. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It seems silly, but it's just you can't ignore it. It's a thing.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. So, listen, Duck Month. Talking to all of our coaches, all of our members. Let's get some advice from a top conditioned athlete like yourself, a top ranked UFC athlete, on how coaches can create a great experience in duck and how members can best benefit from a duck class. So give us your words of wisdom as a coach. How does a coach create a great duck class?
Structure, especially with that many people, it can get crazy. I would get overwhelmed at ours because we just have so many people on those classes. It's awesome. But I think really emphasizing for the coaches to not get lazy and always show the exact technique you're looking for, because a lot of times when they get tired or they get lazy, they're gonna try to cheat it a little bit by lacking in form. But I think the days when you're really rocking and you feel good, you need to try to perfect that form every time and make it look good. I think that's probably the biggest thing I could think of, because all my conditioning, when I do the days and when I'm in the best shape, I can do the whole workout and do a high volume as far as getting through it, just pushing the pace. But nailing technique is also good, or else you're going to hurt yourself in the long run. So I think coaches just putting a lot of emphasis on, remember guys, this is what we're looking for, and people pick that up, and then it lasts with them forever, knowing the proper way to do something.
That's good. And then on the other foot, you have the member. And I know when I take a duck class, I'm 20 minutes into it, and I'm looking at the clock, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I got another 30 minutes here. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times a coach will get me through that barrier.
Yeah.
But what's your tip to the member of enjoying and maximizing the benefits from duck class?
Well, the trick to getting through things is pretty easy, because for me, now that I've done 5-round fights, that was always a fear to do 5-round fights. And now that I've done them, I feel like I can do anything. Like I can do something out of shape and I'll get through it. You know, it took me over a mental hurdle. And I think the real trick is just people to know, I just pull back a little. Like if you're setting a good pace for what you think and all of a sudden you hit a wall, just pull your pace back. Don't stop. Don't stop the workout. Just keep moving. Even if it's in slow motion, just keep moving and your rhythm will come back. You'll get your second wind or third wind and you'll be able to push through. But it's the moment that you doubt and stop, your body will quit. But if you keep pushing, because that quitting is just your body trying to evaluate the situation and set limits, but you can always push past that. That's just the body trying to tell you, hey, yeah, let's stop this because we're not used to doing this. But once you push through that, your body will keep going.
And how would you characterize the difference of UFC gym as compared to a traditional fitness club?
I feel like we are a traditional fitness club just with more options. You know, we have all the weights, we have the treadmills, we have everything, and then we got, you know, mixed martial arts. We got kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and all the extra stuff that people want to learn all in one roof. So to me, it's a perfect facility. We even will watch your kids. So
yeah,
you know,
and the kids can train.
Yeah, and that's cool too. It's a place where it's encouraged for, you know, kids and the, you know, parents to work out together. It's pretty cool.
All right, couple of questions for you. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Favorite movie, man. I guess you would say I'm indecisive because I can never narrow it down.
Let me guess, Titanic? You look like a Titanic guy.
Wow, that's
Pretty Woman? Is that more your style?
That's disrespectful. Something more comedy, Step Brothers or Dumb and Dumber. Like
you're a comedy guy, dry humor.
Dry humor is more my thing.
Favorite TV show?
I watch tons of TV right now.
Are you a Netflix guy or are you more network TV?
I have Netflix, but then I also have a Stream Smart, so I could look up a lot of shows and just, you know, binge watch a series. So it makes it easy because I'm at the gym, I come home hanging with the baby and my girl. So, you know, throw on a movie, you know, or a TV show, a series that we're into, clean the house, you know, everything's chill.
What's the last show you binge watched?
Last show I binge watched. It's sad because I watch a lot right now. You know how it is when the baby's little. Oh, yeah. What did I watch? I can't even remember right now. I'm drawing a blank on
it. My first binge experience was the TV show 24.
Oh, okay.
With Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah.
Somebody said you had to go get this. It was back DVDs, which I don't know if even kids know what those are anymore. But so I got the whole season, and literally I watched the whole thing in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Every hour. I just couldn't turn it off. I couldn't turn it down. That introduced me to binge watching. You
lived 24?
I became Kiefer Sutherland. I understood.
In your
Jack
mind?
Bauer. I was Jack Bauer.
So they brought it back, right? Was that any good?
It was. I lost interest after the third episode.
Okay.
It just wasn't the same approach as Jack Bauer. What's your favorite food?
Cookies.
What kind?
Anything but raisins. I'm not a fan of putting raisins or like fruit in a dessert.
Raisins I think would ruin.
Yeah, like a oatmeal raisin cookie.
That's not your style.
I need chocolate chips.
You like to gamble?
I do.
What do you play?
Roulette.
How do you do? I mean, there's no skill to that. It's all.
I think so.
What do you mean you think there's skill? Tell me how there's skill to roulette.
Because if you look at the wheel and you watch like what it's rolling, the same numbers will hit multiple times versus some numbers will never hit. So I feel like it goes into like a cycle of.
I have no idea what you're talking about right now.
On the wheel.
I know, but what do you mean the same number hitting?
Yeah, like if you're saying like
7. I want 7 to hit.
Yeah, 7 would be red, right? So 7 red. If you'll see it on the board, it might be on there 3 times, but 33 won't be on there, or tons of numbers won't be on there. It's the same couple of numbers. So I'll bet those, and I'll
You know
bet.
what I feel like right now is when BJ Penn tell me the world is flat and getting me to believe in it.
No.
All right, you got strategy to your.
I've won more than I've lost on roulette.
You're up. You're positive.
Yeah. And the thing I like about it too is I bet like a small amount of money, but more people bet dollars. I bet like $5 or $10 on one number, and I'll stay with that number until I hit. And $10 is $360.
You don't go black red. You go with a number.
Yeah. So if I hit one time, $360, I'm out.
All right. I won't get in the way of your strategy around roulette. So Cub, thank you for your time. As always, you're a big promoter of UFC GYM. You're an owner of UFC GYM. We absolutely love having you in the family.
Thank you.
Obviously, we got big things to. In a way, Cub's my actual boss as well. I guess in full transparency, everybody should know that. So
I'm glad you know that.
If I don't hit the metrics, then I have to deal with him in the octagon, which is not a pretty sight. So we got to make sure we do a good job out there at Costa Mesa. But we appreciate all the feedback, talking about the DUT program, talking about your childhood, and giving us kind of an undercover look of what made Cub. So we appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Come down, check out my gym. I'd love to see you guys there.
Costa Mesa, UFC GYM Costa Mesa. He'll even do a private PT session for you.
I will.
If you ask him. All right. Thank you, everybody.